Hello and welcome. You're watching Money, Money, Money. I'm AnandRathi. Well, it's the start of a new financial year, and as far as small saving instruments are concerned, it's largely been a status quo for FY16. So the government has decided to keep the PPF rate unchanged for the next fiscal, leaving it at 8.7%. There has been some marginal tinkering in the senior citizen as well as Sukanya Samriddhi account scheme, but that's about all. Take a look. For 2015-16, investments into Sukanya Samriddhi account, the special deposit scheme for the girl child, will earn a higher interest rate of 9.2% compared to 9.1% earlier. While the rate on the popular tax saving Public Provident Fund has been retained at 8.7%. At the same time, the rate for senior citizen savings scheme has been enhanced to 9.3% from the existing 9.2%. Investments into Kisan Vikas Patra will continue yielding interest at the rate of 8.7%. The interest rate on the 10-year NSC has been maintained at 8.8%, while for the 5-year it stands unchanged at 8.5%. So what is the kind of boost that you can expect from small savings where rates have largely been left unchanged in an overall environment where lower interest rates are the order of the day? Well, that's the question we'll be asking Feroze Azeez of AnandRathi Private Wealth Management. And also with us today, we have Dipali Shah and Pankaj Chokle, two investors who are probably looking at small savings for the next financial year. Thanks very much to all of you for joining in. But Feroze, my first question to you is just that in an overall environment where rates could be heading lower, what's the kind of help or boost that a person can expect by investing in small savings?
See, the interest rates over the last 1 year on the 10-year government security has moved down by almost 1.5%. That's a substantial fall, one of the steepest falls you would see.
Sure.
In a situation like that, if these rates have remained unchanged, I think it's a very big positive. See, in the debt portion of a person's portfolio, every basis points of higher interest rate is a certain income. It's not an uncertain income, unlike the equity markets where you have uncertainty prevailing on you. This is like certainty. So there is some degree of comfort on the debt side that the higher interest rates will come to the rescue and absorb the volatility on the equity portion. So I think it's a very, very good thing for a person to use small savings to bring stability to his overall portfolio.
Okay, so that sounds good, in fact quite attractive, but would you guys be looking at investing in small savings?
Yes, there are so many instruments in small scale saving schemes. So can you just rank them in order of preference? I'm confused where to invest, which one is good. So how do I decide?
See, in my opinion, there are about 7-8 small savings that you rightly pointed out. Anybody would get confused because there's so many of them. Which one is right? Do all of them make sense, or which one is most important? So ranking them, I think I'll rank them in the order of preference, like you asked me to do that. See, first one is PPF. Okay, this is one of the most tax efficient instruments which has to be a part of everybody's portfolio with no exception whomsoever we're speaking about. So PPF is the top one, right? Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana is also a very important one, provided you have a child who's a daughter or a sister whom on whose name you could make an investment. Then comes the senior citizen savings scheme. So these are the three. The rest of them all I would classify as one category.
Currently, equity markets are doing good. So, shall I invest into equity mutual funds rather than small savings schemes?
See, it's not an either or. These are complementing products, right? They complement each other. They don't compete with each other, because all saving schemes predominantly have a debt exposure, and there is interest certainty which is there as the prime purpose of being in the portfolio. Equity markets are volatile, and that should be more of your equity portion. Mutual funds can serve the purpose of managing your equity. Small savings can manage your debt portion of the money. So very importantly, they are not competing products. They are complementing each other.
So it's quite important actually that he raised this question of comparing small savings to equity, because my next question is just that besides just investment, okay, like if I have equity shares or mutual funds, I could borrow against it. Can I do the same for small savings?
Yes, a few of them, not all of them. See, for example, NSC certificates, you can borrow against them, right? PPF, you can borrow between 3rd year and the 5th year, right? So there is some degree of liquidity provisioned in the form of borrowing, which actually serves the purpose of liquidity. If you're not able to liquidate your investment, if you're able to borrow against it, it still meets the purpose of actually borrowing against it. So not all of them, two of them predominantly, which are the large ones, PPF and NSE, have some degree of provision to borrow against them. Very valid question. I think it's an important one, especially when you lock in your monies. It's important to see whether you will be able to extract some benefit out of it in terms of a contingency requirement at all.
But if I don't want to borrow and if I want to liquidity, certain because of certain reason, so can I liquidate my instrument? Because I think this instrument have a longer maturity, like 5 years, 15 years, something like that. Okay. So in that scenario, what should I do?
See, liquidation can come from two purposes. One is if you have used it and under the section 80CCD, for example, you need to keep yourself locked in. In a small savings, if I take for illustrative purpose, a post office deposit. If you have a 3-year deposit, it will not qualify. If it's a 5-year deposit is when you will get the benefit. If you've already taken a tax benefit on it, you need to be very careful to liquidate it, because it will undo, and in that particular financial year, you will have to pay the tax which you have taken the benefit in the past. So always be very careful with those instruments which you have actually taken some tax benefit, because it will undo it going back in time, and undoing it and paying extra tax would not be a wise thing to do. Having said which, can you liquidate in the Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, for example? There is a liquidity provision after 18 years. If the child or the person who's the investor crosses 18 years, there is a partial liquidity. After 21 years, you can liquidate the full amount. In PPF, after 7 years, you have a liquidity provision, before which there is none.
What will be the tax implication in long term for these investments?
See, tax implication is of two things, right? One is whether you get a tax benefit, right, and some deduction from your income this year. And the second tax question is whether the return which comes from the instrument is it tax-free. Right? When it comes to PPF, it is both. You get the tax deduction under 80CCD, and also the 8.7% interest is also tax-free. Right? So 8.7% tax-free income is as good as a 12.5% fixed deposit. Right? So that's the power of the 8.7% tax-free income, because you take a 12% fixed deposit and tax it at 30%, for example, you will come down to 8.6, 8.7. So if you're a 20% bracket, it is as good as somebody is offering you 11% fixed deposit, and I'm sure nobody would want to let go of it. Right? So tax has two implications. One is a tax deduction from your income and benefit, and the other is the return comes tax-free. For PPF, it's both. For Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, it is only one, which is the return of 9.2% is tax-free. And senior citizens, it is deductible in the income tax, but the return of 9.3% is not tax-free. So these three important, and their tax implications as well.
All right, so certainly the rationale behind investing in small savings sounds good, but should you lock in your money now? All of that is lined up after this very quick break. We'll be back in a bit. Do stay tuned to Money, Money, Money. Welcome back. You're watching Money, 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 and on top of our mind today is a small savings instrument. With us, we have Feroze Azeez of AnandRathi Private Wealth Management and Dipali Shah and Pankaj Chogle, who join in to talk about their likely investments in small savings. Feroze, we've discussed a lot about what's the rationale behind investing in small savings. Okay, so what if, should I be investing in small savings now, given that there could be an interest rate cut, next year? Say if interest rates were to go down still further, should I have locked in my money, or will my money benefit from that even if it's locked in for the next 5 years or so?
Yes, that's a very, very important feature, that you lock in yourself a post office deposit, for example, which is an alternative to a fixed deposit. Even if there's an interest rate change the next year, you're still locked in the current level. So that's a very big advantage. It's not that you get repegged every year to a lower interest rate, so you've locked in for 5 years, right? So it's very important that there are some small savings instruments which actually lock in the interest rate which was declared at the time of investment and don't get repegged every year.
Right.
So unlike PPF, where if there is a rate reduction, even the investments made in the previous year will start fetching in lower interest going forward. So it's a moving interest rate, and it's not dependent on when you actually made the investment. But there are some small savings instruments
So
like
what
the
schemes would these be?
the post office deposit is the most important one, and senior citizen savings scheme, which locks in the interest and does not have a moving goalpost every time there is a change in the interest rate.
Feroze, I would like to ask you one more question. My dad had invested 2,000 rupees ka SIP 15 years back. So now the value of that SIP has grown up to 34 lakhs. So can I expect such kind of lucrative returns from these schemes?
First, Pankaj, congratulations. You're one of them who, your dad, of course, has made an investment consistently. I think the patience is paid off. And 2,000 rupee SIP. Now, if you look at 2,000 rupees, it's certainly categorized as a small savings. But there's a huge maturity. 34 lakhs is not a small amount of maturity by any standards. So small savings resulting in huge maturities always happens in finance because of compounding impact. But fortunately, unfortunately, compounding impact also depends on the interest per annum you earn. Since these small savings predominantly are debt instruments, okay, would range in a return of 8 to 9.5% over long periods of time. So that kind of returns, it's very unlikely. If my maths serves me right, I would say that a 2,000 rupee SIP done in maybe a post office monthly income scheme, which could be a parallel kind of an investment, which also allows a monthly recurring investment. It's called the post office monthly income scheme. Your 2,000 rupee SIP would probably grow to 5.5 to 5.5 lakhs. So that's the power of equity and taking risk.
Wow.
As against 5.5, you've got 34 lakhs. But still this 5.5 is very critical in the part of the portfolio because this is stable. This is negligible or no risk, right? So both of them, again, like going back to the same point, that they have a point in place, but you can't certainly expect those kind of supernormal returns. I think patience in the mutual fund category has really benefited your portfolio.
This budget, there is a separate 50,000 was kept for only NPS, but I don't think there's any advantage of investing into NPS. Do you recommend NPS investments?
I think firstly, like you rightly pointed out, in this budget they have kept a separate 50,000 limit only for NPS, which is a very, very big change, okay, because this 80CCD has everything under the sun combined to take the benefit. So somebody might be investing in PPF and exhausting that limit, somebody would be investing in insurance and exhaust. This NPS as an instrument, I think keeping it segregated is very, very important, and it brings in clarity in people's mind. Now coming whether NPS is a good vehicle to participate, I would say there is no better vehicle. Why? Because it is very professionally managed by the same mutual fund guys who almost control 70 to 80% of the mutual fund industry of 12 lakh crores. Those are the guys who have created infrastructure of analysts, fund managers, professional management, professional CEOs, professional chief investment officers running those businesses, all available to you at 1/100th the cost, not half the cost. Not 10 times less of the cost, 100 times less of the cost. Okay, now people say 2% is the management fee on a mutual fund. This might be 0.002. How much does it make a difference, 2%? Now I'll give you an example. If you grow your money at, let's assume, 12% as against 14%, 1 lakh rupee for the next 10 years. If you grew it at 12% as against growing it at 14%, the difference because of this 2% could itself be 1.5 lakh rupees. So your capital will be, your difference is greater than your capital itself. So that's the kind of cost savings over long periods of time you can have and still enjoy the high degree of professional management which mutual fund infrastructure is created. And to top it all, asset allocation provision is also incorporated inside. So you can participate in debt, you can participate in equity as well.
Okay, but how to open this account? Because last week I had visited one of the banks and I asked them, I just want to open this account. Since I am not a government employee, so they told me, no, you cannot open, and for private players, we don't have any idea how to open this account. So
see, what happens is the point of contact is an elaborate list of people or or banks which are allowed to open NPS accounts. This is a little evolving system, but there are some state-run banks which have evolved in this process. Okay, probably if to mention a few, State Bank of India has mastered the art of opening NPS accounts. Okay, I know for a fact that I've opened one using State Bank of India as my point of contact. So as things progress, as more people actually after this budget look forward to more making NPS investments, I think the system will evolve itself and it will become smoother.
All right, and just to wrap it up then, so you know, while every individual scheme may have its own pros and cons, besides PPF, which of course is favored by almost everyone, is there any big incentive in any individual scheme? Is there anything else that's also relevant besides PPF, or can it be avoided?
I think definitely there are two more which you should definitely consider. Senior citizen. In your family, generally in a family, you will at least have one senior citizen. He taking a 9.3% locked-in interest rate for 5 years is something very, very good. And the other one, Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, is amazing to my mind. Getting tax-free returns of those magnitudes can definitely come towards long-term savings of the child. So these are the two which are very, very important, other than PPF, of course.
All right, so sounds good. I'm sure you've given a lot of incentive for people to go out there and explore the small savings instruments. Thanks very much, Dipali and Pankaj, for joining in, and I hope that this has been useful for both of you. And Feroze, as always, thanks very much for advising not just the two of them, but also our entire set of viewers. Thanks very much once again. We need to take a break on that note, but when we come back, it will be time for our tip of the week. Stay tuned.